All right, welcome into the Boston Sports Beat. John Zannis alongside Patriots insider for Boston Sports Journal, Greg Bedard. And Greg, I guess the morning after question on the Patriots 25-6 win over the Jets. Was it a good win or a bad win?
It was a win. I would not say it was a good win. I mean, Look, when the opponent, a rebuilding opponent, gives you 4 interceptions before even the halfway point in the third quarter, and you need to basically make some defensive stands in the fourth quarter to win that game, it's not a good win. It's just not. And I don't know why people are trying to talk themselves into it. It wasn't. I mean, a lot of the stuff that they had issues with in week one, from pass protection, stopping the run, getting off the field in key points. I mean, they got a little bit better at that, but in general, there was a little bit of improvement, incremental, overall. Not with the run defense. I thought it was worse in this game. The Jets almost averaged about almost 5 yards a carry, and really, if they just stuck to the ground, they probably would have been in this game till the very end. But no, I did not think it was a good win. It was a win. It was a win that they needed to get. They got it. Let's not write home about it.
Yeah, I guess in addition to the things that you mentioned with the run defense, the protection obviously was rough, and the Trent Brown injury certainly is a huge deal. They start one tackle, they have to yank him. Durant there early in the first half just because things weren't going well. It just seemed like Mac was never able to get comfortable in the pocket. I guess the question is, how much of it was on game planning? How much of it was on personnel limitations, whether it be down a tackle or getting to know the receivers, where it's just still you're not able to open things up? I guess, as you wrote in your column for Boston Sports Journal, Greg, everyone's got to be a little bit patient. And I think that's the problem, is nobody is patient. You want to see them open it up. And it's not just to get to where you were in the best days of Tom Brady, where the offense could just march up and down the field and score. I think even seeing what you saw from Mac Jones in week one gave you enough confidence to think, okay, they can do a little more than they're doing here. And you didn't see it. It almost felt like a step back offensively, where, I mean, just yards per attempt, everything was even more conservative than it was in week one, in a game where you felt like they might have been able to open it up a little bit.
I think that, John, a lot of that was opponent dependent. To contrast the 2 weeks, you had the Dolphins, who they brought a lot of pressure. Probably manned up a little bit more than the Jets did. I want to say the 49ers, because I think Robert Saleh, and I think 49ers. But a couple things are at play. Number one, look, the Patriots have a plan for Mac Jones, and it through 2 weeks, it is bringing him along slowly. You can complain about that if you want, or you could do what the Jets did with Zach Wilson, which is basically like, let him go back there and chuck it all over the place, and you get 4 interceptions, and then all of a sudden, who knows where the Jets are right now and whether Wilson can recover from a game like that. So I don't mind the conservative approach for a lot of the reasons you talked about, including what I wrote about, which is, people just have to realize that, forget the Tom Brady offense. Just forget it. All right. It's over with. This is starting from scratch with a whole bunch of people, receivers, tight ends. You have a new left guard. You have a rotating right tackles. There's a lot of different things at play. I mean, Damian Harris has a little bit of experience. James White has a ton, but the other guys, they get JJ Taylor in there when Ramondre Stevenson's out there, more new guys. But I think that in this game specifically, I think a couple things are at play. I think that the pressure that the Patriots allowed early on, in my opinion, affected Mac Jones more than it did in week one. I thought he got a little sped up, a little bit harried. And then you also have to look at the Jets defense is zone-based. And if we've known anything from the way the Patriots have gone against Seattle and San Francisco in years past, it's all right. They're going to hang back and cover 3, some two deep safeties. You're going to run if they show 2 deep safeties. But the bigger thing is you're just going to throw underneath, and you're going to throw crossers and hope that your guys can break tackles and make hay that way. Worked at times. It didn't work all the time against the Jets, but I just think I think it was really circumstances, the way the offense looked in this game. And but I do think they're layering things. And could Mac take a few more chances? Yeah, and they probably want him to. But I understand where they are. I understand where they're going, and I think this is a solid pace. I wouldn't say it's a good pace. It's solid.
Well, and it wouldn't be stunning if the game plan was, particularly when you see Wilson start chucking it all over the place, with every other pass landing in the hands of a Patriot, that the game plan even got more conservative, than it would have been to start, which is, we don't have to do a thing to win here. Just hold on to the ball. They're going to hand it to us. And there's absolutely no reason to take any risks here or any shots or let them back into it. So combined with the protection issues that they were having and the fact that the Jets were just willingly handing over the ball every other possession, it makes sense to say, just take what they give you, because they're going to give you plenty. And that's what ended up pretty lopsided, 25-6. I guess the question is, what happens when they face a good team? I'm not sure whether the Saints are going to qualify coming in, but certainly everybody's already looking 2 weeks ahead against the Bucs. And you shudder to think, anything short of 30 points there doesn't seem like it's going to be good enough. So do you think by week 4, they're incrementally further enough along to be able to stay competitive in a game like that against an elite opponent?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, could they get blown out in that game? Yes. Could they win that game? Yes. I mean, look, the Patriots have probably game planned that game for a while. I would not say that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are, exactly, advanced trigonometry when it comes to playing them in terms of their defensive scheme and what they do offensively. So the Patriots will have a good plan. They will take shots when needed. But the big thing is, it seems like the Patriots need a certain path forward, and that includes they have to stay one game at a time, because the worst thing that they can do is start thinking about Tampa Bay and they lose to the Saints team, which, look, they were challenged last week, but Sean Payton's a good coach. They've been challenged with COVID, travel issues, and hurricanes and all sorts of stuff. So they're in a tough spot. But Sean Payton is a damn good coach, and he's going to have that team ready to come in here. And if the Patriots aren't careful, if they're looking ahead, they're going to lose. And 1-2 going into Tampa is a lot different than 2-1. And then all of a sudden you're staring at 1-3 in the face. And then, that's a tough road to hoe with a team that a lot of things have to come together. So I think they need to stay focused. If they can be 2-1, come out of Tampa 2-2, everything is good. Keep Mac on the ascension plan, the offense on the ascension plan. It's not just Mac. It's Aguilar and Bourne and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, who look like he got a little bit beat up in this game. So there has to be a plan for all of them. I think there is, and I think they're following that. And I think so far so good. It hasn't been great, but so far so good. And we'll see where it goes from there.
All right, the last thing we're going to say, because it gets harder and harder to ignore this with each week, like we saw from Brady. Again, week 1, Bucs didn't even play a good game. Brady throws 4 touchdown passes. Has another 5. So he's got 9 on the season, or as we like to call it, Cam Newton +1. He has nine touchdown passes through 2 weeks here. Again, you're waking up the next day, you're a Patriots fan, you're seeing your offense slog through another game here, and you're starting to get a little bit impatient, a little bit worried. It gets harder and harder to not look back at how this situation unfolded and to see Brady doing what he's doing for seemingly with no end in sight. And again, I don't know where you stand on this whole situation here. At some point, it made sense to want to move on from a guy who's 43 years old because eventually that cliff is coming. I don't see the cliff coming.
Yeah, I mean, look, well, I'm sure we'll get into a lot of Brady talk next week.
Oh yeah,
so I don't want to go nuts with it now. But look, I'm not gonna. Me personally, I mean, Patriots fans can do whatever they want. Me personally, I'm not that impressed with 9 touchdown passes in 2 weeks against 2 defenses that have new defensive coordinators who really don't have that good of personnel on either side, or it's very young. I mean, the Cowboys, Dan Quinn's there. They're not all that good. They didn't have DeMarcus Lawrence, DeMarcus Lawrence was a little bit beat up in that game.
Yep.
This past week is the Falcons. We all know they're garbage and, had a high draft pick. And spending on a tight end, and they have a whole new system there. So,
Yep.
That's pretty typical. I mean, that Brady threw 9 touchdown passes. I mean, whoop-de-damn-do, really, in my opinion. And
it's less that, and it's more the
this team is by the end of the season.
It's less that, it's more the decision. The further you get away from it, the worse it looks.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, look, the scoreboard is going to be there at the end of the. Look, Brady won the first year without question. We'll see what happens in year 2. It looks like Brady's going to win it, but we don't know. We don't know how the Patriots are going to look and Mac Jones is going to look. They could be, by the end of the season, if the Patriots finish 11-6 and win a playoff game and almost pull out a second-round game, and it looks like they have their franchise quarterback of the future, maybe it's a little bit closer. But there's no question through, one season and 2 games, it's Tom Brady and a TKO. But long ways to go.
Okay, I promised we're gonna reserve the rest of the Brady talk from a week from now, because that's all you're gonna hear. But again, it's hard to not notice, and it's hard to stay focused on the week ahead, which is the Saints. Of course, Greg, with the benefit of game
stay focused,
film,
John. Don't look ahead. Stay focused.
With the benefit of some game film, I know Greg is going to really break down what happened exactly in this Patriots-Jets game. So make sure to look to BSJ for that upcoming, once he gets a chance to break things down and see, could the Patriots have been better? What went wrong there? There are other opportunities maybe they could take. So again, make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to Boston Sports Journal. $39 a year, 11 cents a day. Best Boston sports coverage in town, bar none. All right, let's talk some hoops. We're going to welcome in Celtics insider A. Sherrod Blakely. And Sherrod, we desperately need training camp to get here, because we need to see some people. We need to talk to some people. And there's a lot of things we're really interested in terms of this Celtics team and how they're going to look. But it's the offseason. We're dragging, looking for stuff to talk about. And one of the things I always love are lists. And we've got one. We've got the top 100 lists heading into the season are starting to come out. SI releasing theirs. And these always create a little bit of controversy and some talking points. And one of them is everybody's favorite lightning rod player, Marcus Smart, comes in at 60 on the SI list, which is pretty good ranking for Marcus. It's pretty high, I would say. I remember last year he made it into the high 30s on the ESPN list, and that blew a lot of people's minds. 60 might be more in line with where he actually should be, but I'll ask you this, Sherrod. This is the expectations for who Marcus Smart is going to be this season, which, if you're the 60th best overall player, that means there's 30 NBA teams, 2 players per team. You're one of the 2 to 3 best players on any team. That seems, like I said, a little bit lofty. I actually don't know, if you looked around the NBA, if you could say with certainty Marcus Smart would be the 2nd best player on any single franchise, maybe the 3rd on a few. But it's a pretty lofty ranking, which means expectations for him are relatively high in year 1 of, you're the starter, you're the starting point guard, it's your team, go out and and the rock is yours.
Yeah, I think Ime Udoka kind of laid that out earlier on this summer when he talked about Marcus. He's looking for him to be more of a point guard, more of a facilitator, and also obviously be an elite defender. And when you talk about Marcus in that vein, it's clear that you see him having the ball in his hands a lot. You see him being more of the brain trust, if you will, of how your offense and defense is going to run and how your team's overall flow is going to be. And for Marcus and the Celtics to be successful, he has to be great in that role. He can't just be good. He has to be a player that is worthy of the number 60 ranking among all players in the league.
Yeah, and again, it is relatively high when you think of, you're basically talking about 2 players per team. You're putting Marcus into a big 3 sort of conversation to say, yeah, you've got to be a foundational piece alongside the 2 J's here in order for this to be successful. And again, it's one publication's list, but it's always interesting to talk about just in terms of what's it going to be like this year. And again, the expectations are high. One person who was one of the first ones left out of the top 100 was our man, Rob Williams. And I'm going to say, more so than anybody else, and we talked about this a lot during the course of the season and early on in the offseason, the importance of Rob Williams not only being healthy, but taking another leap. And to me, how I feel. I've always thought, if there's a 3rd all-star on this team, it's Rob Williams. There's no question about that. I don't think it's Marcus. I don't think it's anybody else. I don't think it's any of the other young kids that ever get to that. It's Rob Williams. And in order for this team to get past where they were last year or better than a second round exit sort of team, you're going to need people to step up. And the Rob Williams to me is the biggest X factor. It wouldn't be stunning if he came in this year, Sherrod, and put up all defensive numbers and was on the cusp of an all-star selection, or if we saw a guy who played a few games, then got hurt, was a little bit ineffective, rides the bench from time to time, splits minutes with Al Horford. I really don't know which version we're going to get. And we have no visibility into this. We haven't seen him. We have no Instagram workouts, nothing. The person I'm most intrigued to see when we get to go to Media Day in a couple of weeks is Rob Williams.
Him and Ime Udoka are, we're all looking to see what the hell is going on with Rob. The thing about Rob is that the only reason he's outside of that top 100 is because of that very fact that he doesn't stay healthy long enough to where you can get a full evaluation of his impact. I agree that he has more potential to be an all-star, in part because of his potential, but also because there's just a lack of centers other than Joel Embiid and Vucevic. There's really not a lot of centers in the Eastern Conference that you can look at and just kind of pretty much check them off as being all-stars. So Rob is definitely, I think if he can stay healthy, he will be in that conversation. But to your other point, Rob has to be, and I'm going to go Brad Stevens on you, the best version of himself.
There's no doubt about that.
Season long. We can't have this 10, 15 game stretches where he's amazingly awesome, and then 10, 15 game stretches where he's just awful.
Yeah.
There has to be consistency with his play this year if he is supposed to, frankly, be one of the top 100 players, which I think from a talent standpoint, he is that good. But he has to prove it where it matters on the court.
Yeah, what I will say is we didn't see a Rob regression from the point that the Celtics last season figured out when Brad finally got there, and it took him a little while to recognize I should be playing this guy real minutes now, and we got to stop babying. You had that stretch when he was inserted in the starting lineup, and it was 11-2 or 11-3. You had that terrible Embiid game where he just couldn't stay disciplined enough to stay out of foul trouble, and then a couple rough games after that. But coming back from his injury and then into the playoffs before he kind of was forced out by the other injury that was kind of hobbling him throughout there, he didn't look like he was playing poorly. It was simply a physical and a health limitation on him. Outside of those couple of games, the Embiid and the one or two that followed, I think we did see the best version of Rob for most of last season, some lapses aside, but everybody has lapses. So Rob Williams, I think, is unfairly judged because of past history, but we did see a huge leap last year. You need another one this year for the Celtics to get deeper than a one and done or into the second round. So again, Rob is the massive wild card on the outside looking in the top 100. I think this will be the last year ever that Rob Williams is not considered a top 100 NBA player. But that's me. That's my guy, Rob. We know this.
That's your guy. And I'm going to stick with Nesmith will be an all-star within the next 3 years.
I love that. All right.